who you calling folk. This episode takes a quick look at the modern role of psychology in cognitive science.
Come on, I'm with you.
By today's high-tech, fast-paced, politically correct, micromanaged, nitpicky standards, the study of psychology has gotten a bit frumpy. It focuses on how ordinary, everyday, run-of-the-mill type people go about attributing mental states to each other. He's happy, she's pissed, you're curious. Like that. In philosophy of mind and cognitive science, this is called folk or common sense psychology. It's the capacity to describe and predict the moods and behaviors of other people. In daily life, we say general things like pain and joy, or excitement and worry, without using technical scientific-y jargon. So what is the significance of this cladogrammatical bifurcation between folk and scientific psychology? What should the relationship be as we move forward in our investigations of cognition and behavior? Folk psychology describes human intentions, predictions, and descriptions, without reference to the obscure and contradictory philosophical problems of defining those same ideas scientifically. I was initially irritated by the addition of that four-letter F word to the front of one of my favorite subjects. Coming from a scientist, the word folk strikes me as pejorative, underwhelming, downgrading, emphasizing the common rather than the sense, describing something quaintly quotidian, low, even vulgar. To me, and I suspect to many laypersons, the term folk psychology conjures up ideas akin to Aesop's fables or Freud's psychopathology. A kind of naivete like trying to understand tornadoes by studying your backyard. I suspect further that this is the view held by scientific psychologists. They seem to see psychology not as a path to follow, but as a machete, swinging and hacking its way through the jungle of the human mind. In the short time I've been studying cognitive science, I've seen folk psychology treated like a malformed bastard born of an incestuous fornication between a geriatric philosophy and an adolescent science. But is that fair? To be sure, folk psychology has its faults. First and foremost is the weirdness. By weird, I mean weird, Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic. It's increasingly pointed out that psychology is not so much limited in its scope as in its reach. The systematic study of the mind is tragically parochial, being practiced in and on a global and temporal minority. Even I am tempted to characterize psychology as a comparative natural history of white kids and white rats. For all of that, though, there are currently millions of people suffering worldwide from some form of psychological problem, such as autism or addiction. The search for amelioration to these intractable, painful, personal, yet frustratingly non-physical ailments has been a clarion call for a meaningful understanding of the human mind. Pursuant of this goal, the so-called folk psychologists have wandered in and out of the science clubhouse, offering more or less empirically supported palliatives. Overall, a noble effort, but is scientific psychology poised to replace it? Without a doubt, the raw power of science is in its method. The ability to reliably reproduce results is the intrinsic motivating and validating force behind mankind's leaps from caves to cosmos, from brutishness to brilliance. The power to achieve predictable ends by established means is the greatest accomplishment of the mind. Science can claim to have made that possible, but is there madness somewhere lurking in this method? According to various scholarly articles, there is much talk about revolution in science. Let's think back to Thomas Kuhn, who coined the term paradigm shift. He meant to show that science does not accumulate knowledge over time, but rather constantly reinvents itself from its own ashes, never really increasing in amount. Every generation, he argued, thinks it has a firm grasp on life, the universe, and everything, and each successive generation more or less proves them wrong. Many scientists would admit science has had its setbacks, but would insist we are making definite progress towards a totality of knowledge. I disagree with them. Obviously one wants to exclaim, but a lot has changed! But how would you go about quantifying that change? When Galileo peeked through his telescope and saw the vast darkness of space and the immensity of the heavenly bodies, was he increasing knowledge, or was he decreasing what we thought we knew? When Leeuwenhoek peered into his microscope and saw the teeming and swirling life that permeated the world, Was he adding to our knowledge or increasing what was left to learn? The trend continues with quantum mechanics as Schrodinger's cat turns classical physics into a scratching post. I might have said litter box. There's no denying the authority of empirical data. Too often it is forgotten that the framework of the experiment determines the outcome. While scientific psychology brings the weight of rigorous philosophical and experimental studies, I feel it lacks the pliant, sympathetic, and more immediate applications of its folksy sibling. My prediction is that the two psychologies will continue to coexist for a long time to come. There may at times be a tentative truce between them, but I think only an ongoing struggle for legitimacy will continue to hone and improve them both. That's all for now on Folk Psychology. Thanks for watching.
That's all, folks.